Quality is always better than quantity. It's a phrase that has been thrown around in various situations since time immemorial, but for some stupid ass reason, we always keep prioritizing quantity over quality, despite knowing that the result is going to be absolutely shit. Yeah, I'm talking about the barrage of movies and shows that was just thrown onto the internet on July 23, out of which 90% of them were pure garbage, no adulteration at all. It is possibly why the 10% that I thought was good was actually not good at all. They were just good in comparison to the rest of the stuff. बट उनके बारे में जो बोलना था वो तो बोल दिया हूँ. लिंक पे क्लिक करके आप देख सकते हैं. Coming to this week, yeah, this week has been a lot easier on the senses and the nerves. There were just a handful of releases, and most of them managed to connect with me on some level. So let's get on with the list, shall we? But before doing so, a few disclaimers. Firstly, please sit through the credits. And if you're already doing that, you should go a step further and keep an eye out for people who work in these movies. No, not just the actors, directors, writers, cinematographers, editors, etc. Even the production designers, gaffers, camera operators, VFX artists, and more. Because James Gunn recently said that the names of some of the concept artists were missing from the credits. Now, Gunn highlighted this because he's clearly aware of who is in his crew. I haven't seen anyone else do this. So, either it's not such a common issue or people just don't know about this stuff and names just get dropped from the credits. Either way, in the name of art and cinema, go and follow people who work tirelessly behind the scenes along with those whose names are on the posters. Secondly, a spoiler alert is in effect. I know I think too highly of myself because nobody else does, and believe that people are getting to know about the movies and shows in these lists for the first time from me, whereas the truth might be that they aren't. But अपने कर्तव्य का पालन करते हुए spoiler warning दे रहा हूँ. In case you aren't so strict about spoilers, keep watching. However, if you want to go into any of the movies in this list without knowing anything, please feel free to skip them. Since we are talking about skipping, here's the third point. If you check out the description box, you will find the timestamps for each of the reviews in the video. If you see a review that you don't want to watch yet, then you can skip around it. If there's something that you want to watch first, you can do that as well. It's all cool. Fourthly, is that a word? Fourthly, I don't know. It should be though. Yes. Fourthly, please like and share this video, subscribe to the channel, and let me know in the comments about what you thought about the movies that I've talked about here. If you want my views on something you have watched but I haven't, feel free to write that down as well. And if you just want to talk about something that's not remotely related to entertainment, type karo. I'm here to listen to it. And lastly or fifthly, pretty sure that's not a word as well, this is not a ranking. I'm talking about these movies in the order that I watched them, not a ranking. Okay? Okay, let's begin. Batman The Long Halloween Part 2, streaming on Book My Show stream. In the video where I had talked about Part 1 of Batman The Long Halloween, I had said that since this is meant to be a duology, it should be viewed as one. And I was right. I know, that's like the most obvious thing to do, and I shouldn't get any pats for telling people to watch a duology as a duology. But the thing is that many might find part 1 to be a bit boring because it is a whole lot of build up, and they might end up not watching part 2 because all the payoffs are here in the sequel. Hence the advice to watch them together. Alright, with that out of the way, allow me to say that I absolutely love this movie. It starts off with a 1-2 punch of sorts with Bruce Wayne's poison ivy induced dream sequence that's just gorgeous, and the kinetic and dynamic fight between Catwoman and Poison Ivy. And the animation just keeps getting better from that point, with the peak probably being Batman's nightmare sequence when he is hit with Scarecrow's toxin. It feels like it's drawn with crayons. It's insane. I mean, it looks great, but it is insane as well. Also, if you are a fan of The Dark Knight, you will notice the influences here. And if I am being honest, Harvey Dent is fleshed out much better in The Long Halloween. It is way more tragic and gut-wrenching, and Josh Duhamel's voice acting just takes it to the next level. I am a Jensen Ackles fan, so while the rest of the voice cast has done a fantastic job, I obviously loved his work the most. On a side note though, am I the only one who felt that Catwoman and Poison Ivy's costume design was a bit too sexualized? Especially Poison Ivy's. I don't know. The Harley Quinn series showed how you can design female heroes or villains without sexualizing them. So what's the excuse here? You tell me. In the Heights, streaming on Book My Show stream. Before getting into the movie, I just want to mention the controversy around it because I'm afraid that a lot of people, especially those who weren't following the discourse as it was unfolding, will be aware of it. So, even before the movie came out in the USA, it was accused of relegating Afro Latino or Black Latinx people to the background characters while casting light skinned Latinos in the lead. Why was this a problem? Because Afro Latinos or Black Latinx people make for a significant chunk of Washington Heights, the place in which the whole ass movie is set. And I don't think I have to explain how this reflected every and any entertainment industry's obsession with fair skin. Lin Manuel Miranda eventually apologized for this and said that he's listening because the movie deserved that kind of criticism and backlash. Now, I think someone has mentioned that we can both criticize this aspect of In the Heights while enjoying every other aspect of it. Keeping that in mind, I want to say that I loved the movie. And this is coming from someone who's not a big fan of musicals, yet I loved it. I enjoyed the songs, the choreography, the production design, the art direction, and the acting. I think Abhuleta's number and the one on the side of the building are the most well conceived ones. Also, the CGI is bloody amazing. All those reflective shots on the windows are CG, right? I'm pretty sure they are. And somebody should definitely do a breakdown of how they were done. I like the simple storytelling as well. I like the Dominican Republic misdirection. It had a lot to say about ownership and identity and how a community should have the right to call a place their own if their history and contribution to that place is way too intertwined. I'm not the biggest fan of people not moving on because of nostalgia, but when nostalgia is keeping you in a place like New York, I think it's quite alright. Spiral from the Book of Saw, streaming on Lionsgate Play. I like the movie's subject matter, which, in case it wasn't clear from the trailers, is about corruption in the police. And you know how much I like the police getting some good old critique for breaking the law more often than those who are in jail for various crimes. I had a plan to rewatch all the movies before watching this, but I couldn't, so please forgive me if some of my facts about the plot are wrong. Based on what I could decipher, Spiral explicitly states that it has very little to do with the original Saw storyline. It is about a copycat killer. And the pattern of this killer shows that they are after the cops who were involved in a particular case. The kills are quite inventive, and the sound design and practical effects are amazing. I came this close to puking. And I'm someone who isn't very squeamish, so just be aware of what you're walking into. Everything else, though, feels pretty dated. I put the blame for that squarely on the director. He does nothing to elevate the material. He actually makes it worse by okaying those weird sped up edits. Yeah, they were bearable in the late 2000s. Why are you using them now? It just contradicts your efforts to set this movie apart from the originals. Samuel L. Jackson is wasted, Chris Rock is all over the place, and Max Minghella feels like he's in another movie altogether. And on top of all that, it is just predictable as hell. If you have watched enough horror movies, you will know where it's going after a victim who has been skinned is found in a meat shop. I had my reservations about Spiral, but when I remembered that the entries in Saw are all downhill after the first one, and I saw the trailer for Spiral, I was like, okay, I can give this a shot. However, after watching it, I feel that it was completely unnecessary to make this. They should have just gone all in to make Spiral like a pulpy neo-noir crime thriller. The substance had potential. Since they didn't, all you have is this half-assed mess. The Hitman's Wife's Bodyguard, available in theaters. Yeah, no. You'd hear Ryan Reynolds, Salma Hayek, Samuel L. Jackson, Antonio Banderas, and a cameo from Morgan Freeman and think that the movie is going to be fire. But it turns out to be just a fusky bomb. There's some interesting stuff in it. For example, the motivation of the villain is very political and very relevant in nature, but it is never fully explored. It's used like a woke wall decoration. The chemistry between Ryan, Salma, and Samuel is great. Initially, I was actually laughing and having fun, but after seeing them get shoehorned into the villain's plot so stupidly and do the same old jokes but in a louder voice, I just got plain bored here. There's some good action, I think, which is shot pretty competently. But again, there are those weird one-take like sequences that bring down the overall quality of the action. I don't know if there was an idea to make Antonio's character chase down Salma's character so that, Ryan can do the bodyguarding that the bloody title of the movie states. Because to be honest, that would have solved so many problems and given the characters so much to play with. I think there was, since you can see pieces of that idea splattered all over the canvas, just out of order and not in the right proportions. The Courier, streaming on Amazon Prime Video and Book My Show stream. The first thought that crossed my mind is that why doesn't this feel like propaganda, while the ones that we do in India feel like such obvious propaganda? Because most of these spy movies show an ordinary man going above and beyond to do something for the benefit of their country and then coming back to that said country's warm, welcoming arms as a hero. And this is what I deciphered. One, the Courier shows how anti people the government is. That it doesn't take a moment for them to hide behind protocols and say that they can't do anything about the spy and that the spy walked into this situation knowing about the dangers. Two, the movie doesn't have a lot of nationalistic imagery like flags or government offices or the army or in this case the Queen. Even the score sounds very Russian because the movie is set mostly in Moscow. 3. The story is character driven. I think this is the biggest reason. The story isn't just about two countries or just the Cuban Missile Crisis or the glorification of one country and the deglorification of another. It is about two friends looking out for each other while changing the world one step at a time. That's what makes the heart of the movie. That's what is at stake. And that's why it doesn't feel like propaganda, and that's why you engage with the story on an emotional level. In addition to that, of course, it has great performances from Benedict Cumberbatch, Rachel Brosnan, Jessie Buckley, and Merab Ninitze. The production design, costume design, cinematography, editing, and score are excellent. 4 scenes which really hit me in the feels are the one where Rachel intimidates Benedict, the second ballet sequence, Jesse meeting Benedict when he's in the jail, and Benedict and Merab's final meeting. Beautiful. Simply beautiful. The Suicide Squad, available in theaters. After watching Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, I had written an article about how James Gunn interprets every single emotion from the perspective of the character. What I mean to say is that someone like Peter Quill or Drax or Gamora or Rocket or Groot won't express love, anger, or humor in the same way humans do because they have never lived on Earth. Hence, their sensibilities are a little unfamiliar. But he doesn't necessarily go ham and kind of grounds it so that the journey of these characters are relatable on some level. That's what he does in the Suicide Squad 2. The human characters like Bloodsport, Harley Quinn, Ratcatcher 2.0, Peacemaker, Rick Flag, the Polka Dot Man, etc. have been through some inhuman circumstances and they are going through some more inhuman situations in the movie. So yeah, they are miles away from what we consider normal. And the same theory can be applied to the non-human character Nanaue, but times 10. Therefore, the way they perceive the world around them won't be in any way similar to how we would hypothetically perceive it. But Gunn firmly believes that everyone is capable of empathy. Hence, he keeps digging into them until he discovers whatever version of empathy these characters have. I mean, he manages to give Starro a pretty emotional beat, and that's an alien starfish. So, knowing that if you're willing to dive with him in that journey, you will have an action packed, heartfelt time. If you don't, you will have a fun time anyway. Because Gunn approaches this film like an animated movie, as if he's only limited by his imaginations. And every single department, from the action direction team to the VFX team to the production designers, every single department is committed to translating Gunn's wildest imaginations onto the big screen. Hence, you have all these comical title cards, puke-inducing gore, gigantic but intricately detailed sets, kinetic camera work, smooth pacing, gorgeous colors melting into one another, an electric score, and blood-pumping action sequences with Harley, Flag, Peacemaker, Polka Dot Man, and more. If you're only familiar with the James Gunn from the Guardians of the Galaxy movies, you might have a little trouble orienting yourself with this version of the director. Because this is the Gunn from the Slither and Super days who is just working on a scale that's probably bigger than the Guardians of the Galaxy movies. It is riddled with expletives and bloody scenes which will scar your brain. But then you have someone as warm and likable like Ratcatcher 2.0 who will win you over before the credits roll. I think she is the heart of the movie and Daniela really does the role justice. Well, actually every single actor in the movie is so well cast. Idris, Margot, Joel, David, John Cena, and they do a great job in the moments that they get to shine or when they are just meant to be in the background. Also, the movie is very political given its setting, the stuff that the Suicide Squad is told to do versus what they do, everything that Peacemaker says and does, the kaiju metaphor, and I know that there's more, but I don't want to give away everything even if you're okay with spoilers. Also, and I'm saying this from my personal experience only, the first watch might be a little overwhelming. So do give it a rewatch if you can. I certainly will. I think I'm going to watch this all year, well, every time I get the chance to sit down with it. Yeah, that's how much I love the Suicide Squad. Navarasa Volume 1 streaming on Netflix. No, I didn't like it. And I'll tell you why one short film or episode at a time. The first one is Edhiri. The interpretation of forgiveness here is that it can be asked from the person who has been wronged. But if that person didn't do anything to stop themselves from being wronged, then they don't have the power to forgive the perpetrator. Yeah, that's the concluding message of the short, and it comes from the wife whose husband has been killed in cold blood. Everything else in terms of filmmaking is alright, however, that ending increased the suspicion that I had ever since I saw the trailer. And that is, these anthologies hate women. Just wait, it will be clear by the time I get to the ninth one. Okay, the second one is Summer of 92. It is by Priyadarshan. And if you watch this after watching Hangama 2, you are going to suffer from some major whiplash because you won't be able to believe that someone who is capable of eliciting so much laughter within 30 minutes couldn't direct a single funny scene in a 2-hour long feature film. So yeah, it is really witty and self-contained, but the concluding joke is that the woman in question has remained unmarried because of the protagonist's actions. The third one is Project Agni. It wears its Christopher Nolan and Denis Villeneuve inspirations on its sleeve, but in the most pretentious way possible. Where Nolan's Interstellar or Villeneuve's Arrival balances its exposition with evocative visuals, this short only offers exposition. And I don't know if there's any science behind the fiction because the dialogue is so boring that I just zoned out. It doesn't feel like a fully fleshed out episode or short film. It feels like a pitch for a feature length movie. Oh, and the protagonist's wife here is literally erased from existence. Erased. The fourth one is Payasam. This short deals with envy and shows how it can erode a person to such an extent that they cannot see the love that's coming their way. It is engaging, well acted, and really well constructed in terms of music, cinematography, production design, and costume design. The women? Once dead, once widowed, and it is kind of foreshadowed that the wedding the short is set around is also going to break. So that's another woman down. The fifth one is Peace. I don't even know what it is all about. Yeah, I know it is about peace. But what the hell are you trying to say about it? That it is unattainable? By doing what? By saving whatever they are saving here. Yeah, that's not good enough. And I'm saying whatever in order to avoid giving away the main spoiler here. Also, let's put a stop to this obsession towards one takes and the Sri Lankan civil war. Because to be honest, almost every single time their portrayals are half-baked and ill-conceived. Either put your back into it completely or don't touch it. I'm done with this half-ass stuff. What about the women, I hear you asking? Yeah, the protagonist's mom is dead and the kid who comes to seek help from the protagonist, his grandmother is dead. The sixth one is Rodram. Yeah, this one actually made me feel that a memo was sent to each one of these directors that no matter what rasa or emotion they are tackling, the female character should be tortured to shit. And even if they win, it should come at such a great cost that the female character regrets winning. I'm not shitting you one bit, I genuinely think this happened. And in the entirety of Navarasa, since there isn't a single director who is a woman, I'm pretty sure everyone just went with it. You think I'm still reaching? The seventh one is Inmai. Guess who is the antagonist here? A woman. I don't even want to go into the story because it is pretty weak. Still think I'm reaching? The eighth one is Thunita Pin. Guess who is left waiting at the police station for this incompetent as hell soldier who is trying to catch a Naxalite because of his false sense of patriotism? That's right, a woman, the soldier's wife. Need I say more? Okay. The ninth and last one is Gitar Kambi Melanindru. And it has a woman lusting over this man with the personality of a cardboard until he gives in to her. Yes, he gives in to her. Holy shit. Oh, and there's this amazingly disgusting monologue about how one can determine that they have come across their soulmate if they talk like their mother. I had to double check, but yes, that's what the protagonist says. I regret giving this a single minute of my anyway fleeting life. I know a lot of people have talked about anthology fatigue, and there are too many anthologies. And that's why people should stop making them. That's too vague of a reason. After watching Pava Kadaigal, Puttam Puddukalai, Pita Kathalu, and now Navarasa, I think we should put a stop to anthology films until whoever produces them are able to employ female storytellers. That's it. Get female storytellers or shut the hell up. Dial 100, streaming on Z5. Good concept about calling out the corruption that is rotting the Indian police. Some good acting from the cast, especially and very obviously from Manoj Bajpayee and Neena Gupta. There's some half-hearted attempt at calling out the Bikau mainstream media and talking about what pushes people to take revenge and how the act of taking revenge eventually doesn't get you anything. But mostly Dial 100 is just rich potential wasted via vague clues and threats. There's no character work, the stakes never feel real, the setup is good and the ending is good. Everything in the middle is forgettable as hell. Vivo, streaming on Netflix. Let me check what I have written in my notes while watching this. One of the best movies of all time, best animation, best editing, best voice acting, best story with some really emotional beats, best art direction, best character design, best songs, best direction, best songwriting, best everything. And all of that is true. Vivo truly won my heart. From start to finish, it shows what animation can do. There's some traditional 3D animation with some insanely creative editing and virtual camera movement. But then the whole animation style changes into this crayon hand-drawn sequence. But then again, there's this sequence which is a mix of both 3D animation and hand-drawn sketches. It is mind-blowing. That said, the style never overpowers the substance, which is centered around friendship and family and how they will always help you sail through the toughest of times. Yes, I cried a little. I hope I'm not underselling this amazing movie. Please don't miss it. Go to Netflix right now and watch it. Right now. And that's the list, folks. Comment below and let me know what you thought about the reviews, or write down your review about the movies that I talked about here. If you want to recommend something, please go ahead. In addition to that, please like and share this video, subscribe to this channel, and remember to stay healthy and stay safe.